Women, life, freedom. That's the chant that has dominated mass protests across Iran over the past month, coupled with scenes of women cutting their hair and burning their headscarves in defiance of the Islamic Republic's laws against women showing their hair in public, forcing women to wear hijabs. But what began as unrest over the death, perhaps murder, of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, who showed her hair in public and died in the custody of Iran's so-called morality police, has become so much more, especially as more women, including two 16-year-old girls, have become new faces of the movement, both of them killed while joining in protests. Their bodies later returned to their families, bruised and disfigured. They are among at least 144 people killed by Iran's security forces since protests began, according to Amnesty International. CNN cannot independently verify the death toll. A precise figure is impossible for anyone outside the Iranian government to confirm. What we do know for certain is that Iranian authorities are intensifying their violent crackdown on these women and children, firing metal pellets and live ammunition into crowds, beating people with batons. More than 1,000 people have been arrested across the country, some of them students being taken to psychiatric institutions. Situation so dire that Secretary of State Tony Blinken and Vice President Kamala Harris met today with Iranian activists, including one whom you may recognize. That's Nazanin Boniadi, who joins us now. She's advocated for human rights in Iran for years. She's also in the new Amazon series, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, the season finale of which dropped today. And I will ask you about that, I promise, but I know more important than that is what's going on in Iran. I want to know what you asked during the meeting with Secretary of State Blinken and Vice President Harris. Did you come away with any assurances that the U.S. will do more?
Thanks for having me, Jake. I walked away hopeful. I'm very grateful to the administration for making the time for us today. And, you know, the message was that the people of Iran are looking to every democratic leader in the world to stand by them unequivocally, just as we did with the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, just as we did for the people of Ukraine. They deserve and are demanding that we stand by them in the same way. And I was assured by the administration they will do everything they can to ensure accountability of the crimes committed by the Islamic Republic against its own people. As you know, we've had a 43-year case study now on the Islamic Republic, and we've come to the conclusion, based on everything we've seen, that the reform movement is dead. Nobody's calling for reform. Right. Everybody on the ground in Iran wants the theocracy gone. And that message needs to, our policy with Iran needs to reflect what's happening on the ground over there.
And I know even before this latest uprising, you dedicated your performance in the Rings of Power to the women of Iran. So that was even before these protests. What does it mean for you personally to see women and girls at the forefront of this fight?
I mean, the bitter irony of 2 months before Mahsa Amini's murder, I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and this role that I'm playing, Bronwyn in Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, there's so much resilience and tenacity, and I drew such inspiration from my 14 years of advocating for these women, these brave women who are at the forefront of the fight for freedom and democracy. Little did I know in that moment that just 2 months later, I would be outside the federal building in Los Angeles giving a speech to 20,000 protesters who are standing in solidarity with the Iranian people. And this global galvanization, uprising in support of this movement is a watershed moment that we need to pay attention to, because there's nothing more important than freedom. We have to stand by our principles, and we have to ensure that the people of Iran feel that the Democrats in Iran who are fighting for their freedom feel supported.
Small d Democrats, supporting democracy Democrats. You understand the fear that comes with Iran's morality police. You had a run-in with them when you were just 12 years old. Tell us about that. Yeah,
so I was born in Iran 20 days after the revolution. My parents had to escape. They were political refugees, opposed the Islamic Republic. And I grew up in London. When I was 12, my mother took me to Iran to visit family. And I was walking down the street with my mother walking 2-3 steps behind myself and my uncle walking side by side. And a plainclothes militia, a Basiji or a morality policeman walked up to us and asked us, demanded that we presented papers, marriage papers or certificates. And I was forced to wear a hijab at the age of 12, which was in and of itself something that I was not accustomed to, having that freedom taken away from me. But that was such a harrowing experience that I would be questioned about me just walking with my uncle, that I remember thinking how important it is that the girls in Iran are supported against these injustices that they face. So to be here and to be able to talk to the administration today as I witness these brave girls in Iran who are taking off their headscarves and defiantly standing up against this oppressive regime, fearlessly, despite the fact that they know that it could end up with them being beaten. Today, there was a report that in northwest Iran, a girls' school, high school, was raided by the security forces, and 10 girls were beaten to the point of serious injury, and one has reportedly died today.
It's just amazing how much zealous religions are fundamentally about oppressing women and girls.
Yes.
I mean, not just Islam, but religions across the board. What do you want the Biden administration to do, and what do people watching outside, what can they do?
I would like everyone there's an Amnesty International petition to call for an accountability mechanism, an international accountability mechanism, because what we're not doing is we're not gathering enough documentation to be able to somehow hold the Iranian authorities to account. That is very important. Otherwise, these uprisings happen, they get cracked down, and they repeat themselves. Yep. So we need an international mechanism to stop this from happening. So these petitions are very important. The hashtags, even though people think they don't matter, over 200 million hashtags of Mahsa Amini's name have created a groundswell. And they allow for people in Iran to have hope. And that's not nothing. That's not for nothing. But more importantly, I think what I'm looking for is female leaders, Jacinda Ardern, Liz Truss, please stand unequivocally with the women of Iran. I beg you. We are looking to female leaders. Vice President Harris today was very inspiring in what she said. And if you look at the rhetoric that came out of Joe Biden, Senator Joe Biden in 1986 addressed the Senate and unequivocally stood with the people of South Africa, majority black South Africans, and said, our loyalty is to the people and not to the regime, the apartheid regime of South Africa. That's what we want.